Welcome to the All Out Leadership Podcast, hosted by Pastor Eric Lawson, where each episode is uniquely designed to help you live all out by bringing you practical leadership from a biblical perspective delivered in 10 minutes or less. So whether you're a business leader, serving in ministry, or simply looking to grow in your leadership, this podcast is for you. Before we dive into this week's topic, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and download the show notes at ericlawson.com/podcast. And while you're at it, feel free to share the content on social media. Now, let's join Pastor Eric for this week's conversation.
Welcome back to another edition of the All Out Leadership Podcast. We are in week 2 of the 4 T's for transformational confrontation. And you've been on the edge of your seat all week long waiting for these 3 T's. I know it. Here we go. Second T. First one was think. We went through the acronym of think. Second T is this: timing. This is one of the most important parts of confrontation, is getting the timing right. It might be the right thing, and you might even have the right way, but if you don't have the right time, you're going to still end up with the wrong results. Proverbs 15, verse 23. A man has joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season, how good it is. Jesus in John chapter 16, verse 12 said to his disciples, I still have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. It was a timing issue. Everything Jesus had to say was right and is appropriate. They just weren't at the right time, at the right place to be able to hear that. So let's talk about examples of timing. Right place. What is the right place? If it's confrontational in nature, let me tell you what the right place is not. The right place is not an email or a text. Email and text should just be really more, hey, bro, what's up? Encouragement. Hey, let's catch a movie. Or, hey, you on Fortnite? Like fun things, or just informational things. I use text a lot inside of work as an informational tool, but I never use it as a confrontational tool. All confrontation should be face-to-face. It's not through an email. It's not through a text. Because we're going to see here is that 70 to 93% of communication is nonverbal. And that does not come through a text. That doesn't come through an email. And so people have to be able to see you smiling when you said that. They can't see that in your text. You may put a little happy face behind it, but the way it was worded, the feelings, emotions. So please don't confront, text, email. If it's a heavy subject and you're replying, somebody's got a question, I usually just go set up a meeting, or I walk to their office and go, hey, let me talk about that real quick. Heavy things, I just don't do those in emails either. Anything that could go sideways, if it's misunderstood, that's a face-to-face, that's over a phone, that's a verbal conversation of some kind. All right people. Are the right people in this environment? So the wrong thing to do is, okay, we're talking about the right thing. I'm confronting this person. I'm going to do it in the right way. But if I got wrong people there present, then it's not healthy either. So if they're not part of the equation, they're not part of the problem, they're not part of the solution, they probably shouldn't be in that room. Because if you have other people sitting around as a bystander, that other person's going to feel defensive, that other person's going to feel like, hey, you're embarrassing me in front of this person, I'm losing face, I'm losing credibility. That puts somebody into a much more defensive mode, makes it much harder to receive. And the truth is, you might be hurting that other person's influence and reputation with colleagues, or with maybe they're an employee underneath them. So make sure the right people are there. Also, don't do it before some major event. Like my staff know this. If I'm about to walk out and preach, please don't drop a big bomb on me. Like, hey, I want to let you know, I quit. Thanks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, open up your Bibles too. It's like, that was a heavy bomb that you just dropped onto me, and now what do I emotionally do with that when I'm out here to go minister the Word of God to the people? So, just make sure the timing of it is not right before some major event for that person where they're having to focus on something else. And also, here's another time. Don't do it when you don't have time to finish the conversation. So like you're wrapping up a meeting, you got 30 seconds left. Hey, let's open Pandora's box and I want to talk to you about, well, that's not fair because you only had 30 seconds left in your agenda. So if it's important enough for a confrontation, chances are you want to make sure it's actually its own event, it's its own discussion. And so make sure you have plenty of time for that. And Also, don't do it when you're fuming, when you're upset, when you're angry, when you're emotionally charged. That is just not the right time to do it, because I have never been angry and not said something I wish I hadn't have, and you can't take that back. So make sure your timing's correct. Next, we want to talk about tact. It's the tactfulness of how you say it. When you look at warfare, rarely is the full frontal assault the most effective strategy. You go back into the Revolutionary warfare times, we had the British who were using their conventional warfare of them all just lined up and made rows and just fired at the other army lined up, and they kind of just shot each other down like dominoes. And I guess that, I don't even know how they got there. That makes no sense to me. But anyway, somebody said, hey, this is a great idea. So that was conventional warfare. Well, they come over to America and in the early colonial days, and they're fighting in the early American Indian Wars with the French, and they're getting decimated because of guerrilla warfare. The Indians introduced guerrilla warfare with the French, and they were just decimating the British because they were using guerrilla warfare. When it comes to confrontation, I am much more a fan of guerrilla warfare tactics when it comes to confronting. Look, if you're about to set up a meeting, hey, I'm setting up this meeting, and I just want you to know I really got a lot of things I want to drop on you, and I'm really upset about a bunch of things, and hey, look forward to talking. That's a really bad strategy, because what you just said is, hey, we're going to fight. Why don't you go ahead and take time to get ready, and you come and now build up all your defenses. The best a form of attack is a surprise. And so when it comes to confrontation, I rarely let them know it's actually going to be a confrontational event, because I don't want them to get guarded. Proverbs 18:19 says, a brother offended is harder to win than a strong city, and contentions are the bars of a castle. So I rarely just make the announcement. And when you're doing that, you're coming in under the radar, and that's a great way to fly. Come in stealth, come under the radar. Like, hey, could we revisit the conversation yesterday we had? Oh, great. Or, hey, could I get your help with something? I could really use your insights. You know what? I lack some clarity right now. Could you help give me some clarity on something? I might be missing something, and I feel like I don't see something clearly. Could we meet? And I just need your help figuring something out. Well, yeah. Well, who doesn't want to be helpful? Well, they need me. Who doesn't want to be needed? And there we go, under the radar. And then, and again, it's because the goal is a healthy conflict resolution. But if everybody's in defense mode, rarely is anybody actually listening to anybody else, because they're busy thinking about how they're going to defend themselves from whatever it is you just brought and attacked me with. There's a great book, highly recommend it. It's called Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. Brilliant author. It's just an incredible book. You'll struggle to put it down. She just does a fantastic job helping explain how to have these difficult conversations in a way that's respectful, and in a way that's heard, and in a way that helps bring about positive resolution. And the last thing is this: tone. Again, make sure you get the tone right. 70 to 93% of communication is the nonverbal. I like that saying. I can't hear what you're saying because the way you said it was too loud. And so it's just the tone in which we're talking to people is a really, really big component as to whether or not somebody can receive it. Here's a mistake people make when they get mad. When they're not feeling heard, they tend to get louder. Well, you're not hearing me, so I'm going to go louder. Well, you're still not hearing me, and I'm going to go louder. And all you do is you keep going, and just escalating. It's horrible. A better strategy is to get quieter. And preschool teachers understand this. When you got a room full of kids and you need to get their attention, screaming and yelling doesn't do it, because you aren't going to be able to out-scream those kids. You get quieter, because then all of a sudden they start to listen. Hey, boys and girls. And then you get quiet, and all of a sudden the kids get quiet, and now you get their attention. So sometimes the more powerful way to be effective is actually getting a little bit quieter, leaning in a little bit more, versus escalating and raising your voice and being overly demonstrative. Again, watch your body language, watch your face. I just want you to know I love you right now. Well, is your face communicating that while you say it? Or does it look like you need to use the restroom? All right. So all these things are part of making up effective communication. Now, this is not by any stretch an exhaustive insight on effective confrontation, but these are some great starters, and I hope you get that book, Fierce Conversations, and I think you'll find it very useful. Okay, we're going to continue in our leadership podcast with David getting back into the story of Absalom next week.
Thank you for joining us on the All Out Leadership Podcast. We hope you gained new biblical insight that challenged you to grow in your leadership. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we would love your help in getting the content out farther. You can help by subscribing to the podcast at ericlawson.com/podcast and telling others about it. Next week, Pastor Eric will be back with another episode. So until then, we hope you have a great week being an all-out leader.